Okay, so Dana just announced the last main card of the year, final pay-per-view of all time, possibly, I'm not sure, and it's going to sell zero tickets. No, I'm joking. Look, I don't love this card, but I don't need to. I think it's clear that they're definitely saving a lot of our champs like Ilia and Volk, who both should have or could have been on this main event. They're saving things for Paramount. They want to give us some juicies to start off next year because Paramount didn't pay like what was it like $70 billion or whatever it was just for the UFC to dump on the first year. They're gonna blast out massive numbered cards to make sure Paramount is happy, at least hopefully for the first 3 or 4 events. Now I'm gonna tell you guys what I think will headline these events. At the time of recording this, UFC 321 hasn't even happened yet, so we're a little far off. So let's come back to this later and compare. But here's what I think right now, a little far off from, when these cards will be announced. So, January, UFC 324. That's crazy. Can you believe that come January, we'll be at UFC 324? That's crazy. But I think this one will probably be in Los Angeles. Now, I don't have anything to back this up, other than the fact that this year's January pay-per-view was also in LA. The event was a big success in a pretty sick arena. It was called like the Intuit Dome, I believe, or something like that. And it was one of those arenas where I'm sure it looked great in person, but it also looked great just watching it live. So I think they're going to honestly go back. I think they sold out. I think they'll go back. They had a great event early in January. I'm expecting them to have another big one this year coming up, especially now that it's gonna be the first card of the non pay per view era. Now, yeah, I suspect that the first Paramount card will probably be one of the 4 massive events that they have in the year. They've been talking about these CBS cards, which will be like more than just Paramount regular Paramount Plus cards. There'll be like these big events, and these events will probably be, in my assumption, would probably be January, April, June, and June's International Fight Week slash the White House card, and December, or maybe scrap April and September, and maybe September. No Shade could be big. I'm not sure, but look, I do think that this won't be one of the big cards. I'm not too sure, but I know January is probably going to be massive. Anyways, I think there's 2 names that could headline this card, and they're both pretty big and pretty massive. Khamzat Chimaev or Ilia Topuria. Now, the rumors are saying Ilia versus Gaethje. However, I think fan movement could persuade that in a different route. Similarly to how Volk was set to fight Yair, but all of a sudden that wasn't the plan anymore because the fans literally spammed on every UFC post to make sure it didn't happen. I don't think the fans want the Gaethje fight. I think they see through it, and I think they're going to be loud and vocal about it. So if that fight doesn't happen, let's pray it doesn't. I think we could get Khamzat versus Nasruddin Imavov for the headliner of the first Paramount card. Now, this one actually makes a lot of sense to me, even though it might not to you guys. But think about it like this way: it would have been around 5 months post the Dricus fight in August when Khamzat last fought, come January. Plus, he can't really fight in February or March because that's when Ramadan is on. I don't see Hamzat fighting or being in training camp during Ramadan, so I think it makes most sense that Hamzat and the UFC would want to fight in January because after that, realistically, he might be out until like May or June, depending on the fight camp length and all that. Plus, Hamza is one of those unreliable, not very active guys. So if we can get him with a defense right done and early on in the year, I think that'll put a lot of pressure off of the division a little bit. And on top of that, Hamza has a significant amount of contenders for the title, which a lot of divisions don't have. There aren't a lot of divisions with a standout number one contender outside of middleweight. I think Imavov definitely has proven it with a KO over Izzy of all people to become number one contender. And then if that doesn't give you a title shot, he then also went and solidified that over a win with Kyle Barlow. I don't think it was the most exciting fight, but I think he's a necessary number one contender. Now, with that being said, if it's anything like both of their last fights, I don't know if this will be the most exciting fight, but I think it would be good. However, I also do think they'd stack the co-main for sure. Hell, they should stack the entire whole card for this $70 billion deal. Or was it seven? It was probably $7 billion. I actually have no clue. Let me. We're doing some research right now in this moment. How big was the Paramount UFC deal? I might be pulling. Yeah, $7 billion. I don't know where the hell I got 70 billion. That would be insane. Yeah, $7.7 billion. That's crazy. So I think at the very least we can get a stacked main and co-main. Hopefully a whole full stacked card. I don't see them. I don't see them starting off the January. With the mega like big event start off without stacking the entire main card. They have to at least stack the entire main card. Maybe not prelims and early prelims, but at least the main card. Look, um, what am I thinking? Yeah. So I think that you know I think that they might put they could put like some big names in there. I'd put Paddy on the co-main in another fight to earn his shot if he's not getting it next. He's obviously a big name, Paddy Pimlet. Put him on with the contender, and then have that, and then have him win so that he can get that Ilia Topuria fight. If we're not doing that, and instead we're doing someone like Gaethje or someone else, but or maybe look. There's plenty of names that haven't been scheduled to fight by the end of this year that I think could be on that card. I think Izzy's a big one. He hasn't fought since February. It would make a lot of sense for him to come back. He's been talking about how he wants to come back. Strickland's another guy who hasn't fought for a while. He hasn't fought since February as well, I don't think. Yeah, Strickland could be great. They could, bro. You know what? They could honestly do the Strickland Izzy rematch. I wasn't a big fan of that fight, but that's a fight that if you put that in the co-main event, that's gonna sell pay-per-views because they're big. They're both big trash talkers. They had a very, even if it wasn't the most exciting first fight, they had a very it had a lot of press behind it, shall we say? And I think Strickland, the press would be crazy because Strickland and Khamzat, bro, they have a lot of beef, so that'll be so much fun. I think O'Malley as well. O'Malley's a guy who, he's probably gonna get back in there pretty soon. Putting him as a co-main event, bro, that could do numbers. That could do numbers. That's not bad. So yeah, I think either way, Hamza will be the headliner of this card. I know a lot of people were saying Ilia. I know that Dana in the press conference said Ilia, but realistically, right? Hamza, look, Ramadan's from February to March. So Hamzat's probably not fighting February or March unless they're fighting really early February. But I think February is going to be in Australia. So he wouldn't be fighting in Australia. He can't fight March because he'd have a training camp during March, or he'd be fighting, or like he would have a training camp during Ramadan, or he'd be fighting during Ramadan. April is probably going to be too quick of a turnaround, considering he'll be in training camp. Um, he would actually be in training camp during Ramadan, and the guy's always getting sick when he's not in Ramadan training camp. So of course, that's not great. That's not a great idea for a guy like Hamza who's constantly getting sick because he won't be able to eat or drink during Ramadan. So look, he's already prone to sickness and illness. So yeah, I think maximum he'll be able to get back in there is May or June, and I just don't see a possibility. Like, obviously, I can do that, right? But that's gonna make him super inactive. I think that Nazardine Imavov is gonna want to come back before then. I don't know that for sure, but it's best. I feel like it's best to get the division rolling back once more again. I don't know if they put him on the White House card. It doesn't seem like he has interest on the White House card, so May would probably be the date if it's not January. But I think January is a smart date. Now, once again, let's talk about February. Okay, so I kind of already explained this, but I believe that I'm predicting that this is going to be an Australia card, and now this makes a lot more sense for what they're doing. Volk has been out since April and doesn't have a fight lined up, which is crazy because he used to be one of the most active champs. Not Pereira and Marab active, but pretty freaking active. So I'm upset he's been gone. We thought it would be September for him. Then we thought December. But then he put out a message saying that he thought it was Lerone Murphy for December, but a spanner has been thrown in the works. I think a lot of people heard that and thought, okay, it's not going to be Lerone Murphy anymore for December. But now the December card has been, it's been thrown out there and he's not on it. So Volk's not back. for the rest of the year. And it's not even like he just fought like halfway through the year. He fought in April. So that's quite a while. It's not like he's retiring. I know a lot of people thought he'd retire, but he's not. He's going to fight at least one more time. So I think it's pretty obvious he's waiting for an Australian card. Otherwise, he would have been back in December. Now, with that being said, yeah, I think it's February, Australia, Volk, and I think it will be against Murphy. Murphy seems to have put himself as the number one contender. Obviously, there's no like I don't think the UFC these days do straight up number one contenders. But realistically, right, who else could it be? I can't think of anyone else. It wouldn't be Movzar because Movzar, one, he's injured, and two, they didn't even want him when he was active. They didn't even want him for the title shot, anyways. It could be Diego Lopez or Yair, but everyone already knows that the Yair fight was hated on, so I don't think it's going to be Yair. And then Lopez, look, Lopez had a big win, but it wouldn't make a lot of sense for Volk to just fight Lopez and then fight Lopez again after a one fight win streak. I think it's going to be Murphy. I think that'll be the headliner of February's card, and I think honestly it could be Volk's final fight. Usually I wouldn't say that. Like in December, if he had fought in December, I'd say it would be like a 50-50. But the fact that he's fighting for the first time headlining in Sydney, Australia as a champion, because look, NSW is his home, New South Wales. So realistically, right, if that's his first time and that's his last time, wouldn't you want to retire in Sydney instead of retiring in like the US where he's not going to get as big of a buzz as he would in Sydney? Mate, I think that's a perfect retirement fight. I don't want him to retire. I love Volk. Volk's my favorite fighter. But if it's going to be anywhere, it's going to be in Sydney. I also think Whitaker has alluded to being on this card too. He said he doesn't want to come back for a while, until next year, and he said that he really wants to fight in Australia next. So I think Robert Whitaker could be the co-main, and that's a pretty stacked one too. Considering we haven't got very stacked cards in Sydney for a while, bro, Volk headlining is already enough, I think, to get everyone to come in, especially if it's his retirement fight. Whitaker as well. I don't know if Whitaker has a buzz in Australia that he used to because he just hasn't fought here in ages. But that will also stack up the card good and nice, and I think that's acceptable for the Paramount event. I'd like to see maybe an Urseg on there as well. But yeah, I think Volk would headline, and I think it's going to be against Murphy. Now that just leaves March. I think this one's pretty obvious who it's going to be. March, I'm assuming, will hopefully be another big card, maybe like a 299 type of card. Look, I think there's only one guy that can headline this one. Ilia Topuria. I think it's obviously going to be Topuria. Unless they do like Topuria in January, but I just don't see why they would when Khamzat's clearly the one that should be fighting in January. Bro, this one might surprise you. But I think this is going to be against Arman Sarukian. I think that's going to line up the best. It could be Gaethje in January or March, but I don't think people are going to want to see Gaethje. I think I think Gaethje needs one more. They could end up doing Gaethje, so this isn't exactly a prediction of what it could be. It's probably going to be Gaethje, even though I don't want it to be. But realistically, if Ilia fought in January, Gaethje would probably be the only option unless they do Pimblett. But Dana's already said that he's not interested in the Pimblett fight after the presser of 317. When obviously Paddy stormed the cage and had that face off with Ilia. Dana was like, no, that's not the fight we're making. That's not the fight we're doing. That's not the fight yet. He didn't specifically like fully say those words, but that's what he was alluding to. And yeah, I think they're gonna want Ilia. They're gonna want Paddy to do one more, which honestly I don't think they ever needed. If you've seen my videos, I believe that. Look, Paddy Pimblett just fought Michael Chandler. Sure, that's probably not the best idea, but you've had Khalil Roundtree fighting for titles. You've had all these other dudes coming off like small, like always with these big jump ups in the division, fighting for titles. Mate, Kaya Sakura fought for a title and he never even fought in the UFC yet. Dudes fight on a one fight win streak. Paddy's on a significant fight win streak. Like I don't think he's ever lost in the UFC. So I think he's been here for a while. I think he deserves it. But if we're not doing Paddy Pimblett, which I don't think we're doing, and no one really wants Gaethje. Bro, if they did Armin in January, it probably wouldn't work because I think Armin wouldn't accept the fight. He's not really the guy that likes to do quick turnarounds, considering, look, he's going to be fighting in what? He's going to be fighting in November. Yeah, that's a pretty quick turnaround. But what? March? That's 4 month turnaround. That's not too bad. I think he'd be able to do that one, especially if it's like near the end of March. I don't see why he wouldn't be able to do that. And I think Ilia versus Armin would actually be great. Now, this is assuming that Armin beats Dan Hooker, which I think he will. But if he doesn't, I still don't see Hooker versus Topuria. Then I think maybe we would get Gaethje in. I'd rather Paddy the Baddy, but from the post fight, yeah, from the post fight presser, I just don't think it will be. Dana seemed uninterested in making that one, so look, Ilia versus Armin in March seems like it'll be a good one for me if he wins. I like that fight. They both have back and forth beef. They're both actually really entertaining. Like, okay, Armin's just been out for so long, and Armin doesn't really like. If you saw the Ilia Topuria, I mean, if you saw the Islam press conference, the guy didn't speak at all. He's a bit boring when it comes to the lead up, but I think Ilia brings out that side of competitiveness in everyone, so I think that will be entertaining. And then they're both really talented and great fighters. I think they're obviously going to want Ilia to win, but I think that'll be a great fight. If they don't do the Paddy one, and hopefully praying if they don't do Gaethje, I think Armin and March will be a success. Now, if they do switch this around and Ilia does fight Gaethje in January, then I don't exactly know what will be March. I still think Volk will headline February. Maybe March get Pereira back in. Pereira is a big star. He's obviously he's known for wanting to be active, but he could end up fighting on the White House card and taking things more easy now that he's been, now that he's, he only had the 2 fights this year compared to the 3 last year. Maybe he'll take things a bit more slow and wait. Obviously, he's going to wait out for the rest of this year. Maybe he'll come back in June, but if he doesn't, I'm saying either April, May, or hey, maybe he could do March. He could possibly do March, but I'm not too sure. You guys let me know what you think. Could be that next fight because I don't see Khamzat fighting in March if Ilia does take January. But Dana did speak about Ilia and he spoke about Khamzat in their meeting that they talked about in the recent press conference for the Contender Series. So it doesn't necessarily mean that Ilia will be January. It could be Khamzat. So I'm not sure. We'll see. We'll come back to this when we're, when things are announced. Let me know in the comments what you believe it will be. And yeah, I'll catch you around. Oh yeah, and like and subscribe, please, please, please. I'm begging.